Cool.
Oh, and she's recording. And people are coming in now.
Awesome. Welcome. We're going to be talking about leather, the Kraft blade, the Cameo 4 series. So even if you don't have a Cameo 4, there's kind of another option. You have to do a little bit of testing. And even with the Kraft blade, there's a lot of trial and error. So we'll get into that in just a minute. I guess in the comments, share why you're interested in doing leather. What are you interested in making? Purses, wallets, earrings, there's so much. And researching for this class, I've learned that the leather world is like an entirely different craftsman world. There's so much to learn. There's so much, and there's so many different ways to do something, just like anything. But one thing that will hopefully make it easier for you is the Kraft blade and the Cameo 4. So I'm Sarah Gambles. We'll go ahead and get started. So I just kind of wanted to start out just talking a little bit about the Kraft blade and about the Cameo 4. So it's the Cameo 4 series. So we launched the Cameo 4 about like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and the Cameo Plus and the Cameo 4 Plus and the Cameo 4 Pro. So if you have any of those machines, those should work. We are retailing the Cameo 4 Pro and the Cameo 4 in Michaels. So you can go over there, grab your machine. If you don't have one, just enjoy. So the other thing that you'll need is a Kraft blade. So our Kraft blade comes in a 2-pack. So there's 2 blades in 1 pack, and it has this manual adjusting on the bottom. So when you get it, it comes in and it's on the 30, especially for safety. So the blade is all covered and enclosed in there. So there's 2 of those. Here's your option if you are working with a different machine, so an older model, so Cameo 3, Cameo 2, or the Portrait 2, so, or the Portrait 3 as well. So you can either use an adapter with this one. So this one is little, obviously this is a different housing, right? So this one is for those older models. This is the Kraft blade. So the difference is that the Kraft blade for the Cameo 4, so see how we have these 2 chambers here? So this first chamber, if you see, I don't, if you can zoom in on it, this one kind of moves up and down, right? So that's your, like, you're probably gonna mostly use this carriage for your vinyl, for your paper, all of that good stuff. So that's with your auto blade, it auto adjusts. So you don't have to know which blade depth it needs to be. And then this one in chamber 2, I'm pushing down really hard. It's not moving because it uses a different motor for a different force. So that's where your like fabrics, your leather, your burlap, your acetate, those kind of things, if you're like really delving into this world, that's what you're going to use is that chamber 2. So the Kraft blade for the Cameo 4 is 3 millimeters and it goes in chamber 2. So if you haven't used that before, it's really fun and it's really cool, especially like the rotary blade. This one you can use for fabric and for felt. It's seriously one of my favorite tools that Silhouette has ever made. It is awesome. And bonus is that it lasts crazy long. Like I've cut so much with felt, it's still super sharp. Also, you can get that one at Michael's as well. So we're using the Kraft blade. So like I said, so we have this manual adjusting. So we'll go ahead and actually get going. You guys are probably all dying. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask in the comments. We have McKenna, our social media coordinator here, helping answer questions. I can hopefully answer, and a lot of really awesome Silhouette people might be on. I know Ellie Mae Habits, she sent us some good tips for leather. Kelly Wayman always has good tips. They might be on. So if you have any questions, probably a good time to ask. So the Kraft blade. So when you pull it out of the package, you'll see that it starts on down here. So you'll see that it starts on 30, right? So you're going to move it down. So with the leather, this is seriously like so much trial and error. I just want to warn you, just because there are so many different types of leather. Like these, I just kind of wanted these as examples. Like this is pretty thick and really soft. This one is really thick and really stiff. And then this one is pretty thin. This one that we're using today is pretty thin and soft. And so it works really well, but you kind of have to just try it out. So one tip is to have little tiny pieces if you can. I know leather is kind of expensive, but it's really great to have little pieces of the leather you're going to be using that you can test on. So we cut out a couple here. So with our leather, we have this Kraft blade, we have the adjusting. So starts at 30 and we're going to go all the way down. We're going to just keep twisting, coming down. So starting at the red line, it's kind of crazy, lots of numbers. So starting at that red line, we'll be going down, down. So like now we're at 25, or wait, sorry, I went the wrong way. So we're going to start at 30. We're going to twist down, 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 down. And then we're going to, okay, sorry, I'm sorry. I just got confused looking at it upside down. So actually it comes in and you're on 0. This is really confusing. I'm so sorry. So it starts at 0, right? So your blade depth is 0. So that's like, it's not going to cut anything this way, right? So then you're going to move it, you're going to screw it on tighter. So like here we're at 1, 2, 3. And that's where we're going to stop today for our first cut. So we have to do a couple because we have to score it. So we'll stop at 3. So I'm going to double check, make sure that my one in the carriage is at 3. Good thing I checked, it's at 4. So we'll go to 3, make sure it's pushed all the way in. That's one tricky thing. It feels like it kind of slides in, but a lot of people push it in and there's that little gap. No good. Push it all the way in, clip it in. And then we're going to grab our leather. Again, every leather is totally different. So you want to test, you want to try it lots of different ways. So we're going to start, actually, let's do our test first. So we have this little piece, and this side, here's like the rougher side with the fibers, and here's the smoother side. With certain types of leather, I found it's easier to put the smooth side on to the adhesive part of the mat. It might just depend, especially depending on what kind of leather. Like this one, it was a little bit easier to do with the fibers on top of the mat, just because this one, it kind of roughed up the finish a little bit. So literally, the leather is so exciting. It's so fun, but it's like so much trial and error. So lots of patience. And once you figure it out, it's super fulfilling. Just a warning. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll put our test piece on and we'll stick it on really good. So putting that sticky side down first, my hands are getting stuck to the sticky part. This is brand new mat. So stick it on really good. And then we'll get it loaded in. So that part is all set. So now we're going to come into our screen sharing. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. The smooth side down, yeah. But like I said, it's kind of different for every piece of leather. But I know that Kelly, like some of the tutorials I had read that she had done, she had used the smooth side down, and it does seem to flow better on the machine because of like the smoothness. Sometimes it will bind, if that makes sense. We'll see. We'll do some testing and stuff. So just making sure you guys have all of your supplies. So we're going to go and we're going to get this design. So I'm just going to copy and paste it, this design ID, and go to our design store. This design is free. It's just a little envelope design, super simple. So as you can see, I already bought it. Well, didn't buy it, got it for free, downloaded it. So what we would do is normally you could just put that in the search, and then here we go. And then you can just, either you can add it to your cart, download it, whatever. So now that it's in there, we'll go ahead and open up Silhouette Studio. So let's make that bigger. So this is the size of so we'll go to our design layout. So I had just made a copy and made it really small. And let's see, this is about 2 inches. So I might make it a little bit smaller for our test cut. And especially if you're using a new material or a new tool you're not familiar with, I highly recommend doing something like this, just because you don't want to put that, you have this like nice sheet of leather down, and you just put it down, start cutting, and you just never know what's going to happen, right? So get your little piece, get it on there, get it adjusted. So normally you can go and open it. I don't want to because I don't want my computer to freeze. Sometimes it does that, but you can open the design after you've downloaded it, get it in there. So this one, we're just going to make a copy, size it down, make it real small, and then get into your send panel. So here, depending on what version of Silhouette Studio you have, it might look a little bit different. So you'll definitely want to check. So like I talked about at the beginning, we're using carriage 2. So usually the automatic is it opens up this carriage 1, right? Because that's usually what we're using. So you're going to close that, open up carriage 2. So then the auto detection has found that we already have our Kraft blade loaded, which I love the auto detection feature in the Cameo 4 series and the Portrait 3. So we don't have to select that. If it didn't detect it for whatever reason, just go ahead, select that Kraft blade, select your Kraft cut. And then here you can see a bunch of different options for different types of materials. Depending on, again, what version of software you have, you might need to make a new type, but I have the most recent version of Silhouette Studio, which I highly recommend doing like as often as you can, is getting the most recent version, just because the features are going to work the absolute best. So we have our leather garment, and it comes in, it starts, the auto feature is actually at 15, but I sized it, put the force, oh, whoops, I went all the way up to 17. I put the force down because, again, this is where our trial and error comes in. This is a pretty thin piece of leather, right? So we don't need as much force as if you were cutting something a lot thicker. So we're going to go down to our 10 and then just check your speed. This one, I don't like the speed. I also don't like the speed to be very high just because it is a lot to go through. And the Kraft blade, the way that it's different is it's more angled than the auto blade. And so it drags more. So I like the speed to be kind of low. So then we'll check this is where you're going to see your adjustments for the blade. So it's at 6 right now. So we're going to go ahead and bump it down to 3 if we can. There we go. And if you see over here, these little lines, these extra lines, so this is called our tangential cutting. So because the motor is like that tough, like super hard hitting motor, it has to turn at some point to get those cuts. So this one, it has to do those little tangential cuts to get those sharp corners and those edges that we love. So another tip is to make sure that you have plenty of material. So even if your material, maybe your material fits, but then like say, so mine's 2 inches wide, right? And it's way more than 3 inches long. But say that it was bigger, you'd never want your tangential cuts, like you would never want this to go off the edge at all, just because sometimes it affects the way it cuts. So that's just a little tip. And we'll see more when we're cutting. I can talk about it more when we're cutting. Again, if you have any questions, just let us know. So we'll go ahead, double check everything. I like to do that. We only want 1 pass on this level. Okay, it looks like everything is good. So let's go ahead and hit send. It's always a little nerve-wracking, right? So it's a good thing it's our test, right? Okay, we'll stop sharing for just a second so you can see it cutting, working its magic. So with leather and like it's animal hide, right? You can also use vegan leather, which is awesome. There's tons of really awesome vegan leathers out there, but it's very similar. Those really dense fibers. And so it's really hard to cut through. So as you can see, if you can zoom in here, it did our first cut, but you might not be able to tell, but it's probably not all the way through because it's so dense and there's so many fibers. We have to kind of score it first. So we're going to do another cut, but we're going to increase the blade depth. So we're going to pull out our blade and I'm going to go up to 5. So we're going to go up to 5, put it back in, make sure it's in there really good. And then I'll come back to my sharing. Okay, so now we're gonna bump that up to our 5. And you don't want to take the mat out. You don't want to change anything because you want it to stay in there aligned, right? So go ahead and send. So this is scoring our next line. And depending on the thickness of your leather, the second scoring might do it, might cut it all the way through. This one, we'll have to check. Sometimes it has, sometimes I like to do that third round just to be sure. Okay. So we'll come back to our leather. I'm just going to peel up the side. Let's see. Okay, let's do one more round. It's really close. So we'll come back. And at this point, you can kind of adjust. Like you might just want to cut it, just run it back through the same length. I'm going to go up to 6. That's one thing with the Kraft blade too, and especially with leather, is you don't want to bump it up too much. Like obviously if I like had the blade depth at like 30, it would just cut right through. It might even cut into your machine. So you want to be really careful, really wary of that. So we'll go ahead, push it back in, and we'll go back up to a 6. And we'll go ahead and send. And it looks like, I think that we did it. So we'll go ahead, we'll check again. Ah, it's so close. Let's just go one more time on that 6. So also depending on your design, that will also change things. So this isn't a super complicated design, but there are some sharp corners that we want to get. So we'll go ahead and we'll just send it through on 6 again. I think that should do it. It also depends on the day, right? I don't know if that's just me. It's like sometimes you get in there and you're like, everything is perfect and smooth. And then another day, you just like forget how to load the mat. You forget how to work the software. It's all crazy. You guys are awesome though. Like Silhouette takes like a lot of different types of skills, like software skills. I sound like Napoleon Dynamite. Okay, let's see. Ah, we're so close. Let's just pull this one. So then you can just lift it up and you can see that it's like pretty much cut all the way through. So I might change my blade actually. That one might be kind of dull. Sometimes you'll just have to like snip off the edges. So there's like, it's all coming down. So I just have to snip this corner. And then just
Sarah, somebody asked, do you have any tips for keeping the leather on the mat without lifting? Do you use painter tape or masking tape ever?
Yeah, I would recommend using either of those, honestly. That I've used both of those. And especially if you have a new mat, another trick with our mats that's really cool is that you can actually wash your mat with soap and water. And so you can get the most out of it. It will work pretty close to how when you bought it. I mean, obviously ideal world is like a bunch of new mats at all times, and then sometimes it just depends on the leather. If it's super thick, you might just have to send it through a few times and also use that painter's tape. So we'll go ahead, let's get started. Let's cut our actual piece. So stick it on there and then we'll go ahead and load. And then again, start over. So we're at the 6, so we're gonna bump it down to a 3. And then sometimes you might wanna blow in there or make sure there's no fibers in there. Sometimes that can affect your cuts. And then push it back in. And then we'll go back to our design. So we'll take our little test cut off, and then we'll grab our actual size. And if you have a bigger mat, you can obviously make a bigger version, a bigger purse, a bigger, I guess it's a little pouch, like a little, you can put like your chapstick in it, maybe like a couple of debit cards or something if you're going like dancing when the pandemic's over. So like I said, you want to make sure that you have lots of space for those tangential cuts to make their corners. So I'm actually going to angle this a little bit just to make sure. And just center it in, make sure we've got everything good. Go back to our send panel, and then we'll bump down our blade depth down to that 3. Make sure everything's good, our force, our speed, and then we'll go ahead and click send. Now we'll see it work its magic.
All right, somebody asked, have you ever used the strong tack mat for leather?
Yes, the strong tack mat is awesome. So I would actually recommend the strong tack mat or a brand new standard tack.
And then somebody else asked, you mentioned that you can wash your mat with soap and water to make it sticky again. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I've just used like a rag, one that doesn't have like a lot of fibers. Like, you know how some have like a lot that come off when you're scrubbing on something. So one that doesn't have a lot of fibers, and then just scrub it with soap and water, and then don't towel dry it off at all. Just let it air dry, and then it becomes a little bit more sticky again. I have tons of mats that I've saved because of that. Okay, so as we can see, it's scored. It's looking pretty good. So we'll go ahead and come back. Actually, let's do our blade first while we're at the machine. So we're at the 3, go up to the 5. Stick it back in, make sure it's in there. And then we'll go ahead and we'll come back to our screen. And then we'll bump this up to 5. And then we'll go ahead and hit send. So one thing to point out too is, remember how we did the test cut and that one had like big circles around the corners? So the smaller your design is, the more tangential little corners it will have to round. And so sometimes you kind of have to take that into consideration with whatever you're trying to make. So this one, there's really not much, which is kind of nice. Just because you don't have to worry about all that space. You don't have to waste any more of your precious material. So those bigger designs are really awesome to use. What's your favorite thing to make with your silhouette? What's your favorite material to use? I think mine is still felt. I love felt, but leather has been a really fun experience. Like I said, there's a lot to learn, and there are so many crazy tools out there that can help you learn. Okay, so I think we're close, but let's just lift it up. Okay, I don't think that it's gone all the way through just yet. So we'll just bump it up to 6. And then make sure it's in, come back. And then get back to our Silhouette Studio, bump it up to 6 again, if I can. Oh, that was it. Okay. So everything looks good still. Go ahead. No! That's mean. Has that ever happened to anyone? My computer has like, I don't know what happened to it. It's like 4 years old, and something happened where it's like really slow nowadays. I don't know why it's doing it. It's just rude. So, okay, pulling it back up. I don't know if this is the same one. See, like I said, lots of trial and error. It's rough, but it's worth it if you can get it to work the way that you want. So it's really awesome. So I don't know why it's saying setting not found. Let's see. Maybe we just need to go to leather. There we go. Okay. So I think that's because it was a material that you wouldn't really cut with a Kraft blade. So I don't know. Let's just try it. We'll send it through. Ah, we don't want it on 17 though. See, computer, it's really rude. Doesn't it always happen when you're like so close to finishing? Also, it's like we had one more cut and it's like, nah. Oh, and we don't want 3 passes. And the force is good. We'll bump that speed down to 3 and then we'll hit send and cross our fingers. So sometimes when you're cutting with leather, like I said, it will bind. So honestly, you'll know when it happens because it's like kind of scary. We can maybe do it on like a little test piece just so you know like what's going on there. So like I said, the fibers are so thick and so dense on leather that it basically it's just that the blade gets bound to the leather. And so that's where also like depending on what it looks like on the top and the back of your leather, that's where you kind of decide what you put down on the sticky side. Because the smoothness can like drag and pick up easier, but the more like fibrous side, it's harder for the blade to get caught on. So that's why it's kind of beneficial if you can put the smooth side down, but some leathers, it's like, you don't want to put it all on a sticky thing yet. Okay, so we'll go ahead and lift. Oh no, this one is just barely, we'll go ahead and pull it out. Okay, so there's just some corners. Sometimes that happens and that's totally fine. I mean, I tried to make something like this one time and maybe it's just me and geometry like don't get along, but I could not figure out how to make it even. So even if you just have to do these little tiny clips, I think it's still really awesome to have your machine just get it for you. And especially if you're making a bunch, it'll just do it so fast. So on this side, maybe it's easier to see on this side since it cut on this side. So just kind of, and then I bet it'll just come to the edge. And then we'll just snip this little bit. It happens. And like, I don't know, if you already have your Cameo, like I said, I've been looking into doing more leather stuff because I think it's freaking cool, but the tools are crazy expensive. So if you already have your Cameo, especially if you're using it for other things, like put it to work, right? Has anyone made anything with leather before? Do you have any tips or has anyone cut leather with their Cameo for? There we go. I think this one will just, there we go. Okay. Yeah. See, I love those corners. Perfect. Okay. So now with leather, this is actually, I don't know, maybe you guys won't say I only cut leatherette, but excited. Awesome. Oh, Kelly is reaching out. Let's see what she says. You will probably have success with your Cameo 3 and faux leather. Yes, I love cutting faux leather. It's so like, I don't know. It looks so good, especially if you're adding it as like a detail on something. And I feel like the Cameo cuts it so good. It's even like, especially the Cameo 3 too. Like they both can cut it. So I'm just going to show you real quick before we move on to the next part of our leather, just one more thing with the Cameo, just for if you get stuck on something. So we're going to show what happens when it's gone wrong, right? Just so you know what to do. So I'm putting that fibrous side down and then we're going to stick it in. And then let's go actually, let's change our blade depth. So we're gonna go a little bit too far. So if you're gonna buy, if you wanna do this quick, you just know that leather requires patience. So you'll see, we'll clip it in. Oh, I didn't even change the setting to 10, but it's okay because it will go. Maybe it'll work. It probably will, knowing this, that I'm, oh no, see, and then it's off. So that's why you do your test, right? Oh, I think I didn't even change the thing. What am I doing? I'm sorry, guys. Let's just pause. See, that's what it sounds like. It's too deep. It might be cutting the mat. This is scary. Okay. See, it cut the mat. So you do not want it to go too deep because disaster. And sometimes it just has a mind of its own. We might just turn it off, actually. Okay, so don't let that happen. Don't put your blade too deep, too early. So take your time, make it count. It's totally worth it. As you can see, like I'm kind of scared now. Okay, we're good. Okay, so anyway, with the leather. And that is like the most stressful situation, right? Especially when you're like, if you have like your final piece and you just hear that noise, like, oh, worst sound. So with our leather, we're gonna lay it down. And then here's this little fork tool. This is where it, because leather is so thick and fibrous, right? You are going to need this to be able to stitch through it. So I've got some more options that we can show as well to bind your little clasp together. So we'll show, I have two pieces. I cut this one earlier. So this one, we'll do that one with the little rivets and this one with the stitching. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna put this little fork in and you just kind of, I like to use my little cutting mat that has the little spacing on it. And then, oh, I love this. Kelly said, don't panic, hit pause once. I know, and I freaked out. So you can see, you know what it's like. Because if you hit pause twice, then it starts playing again, as you saw. So you just line it up and you find like, you don't want it too close to the edge, obviously. So you start in a corner. It's best to start in like the corner, right? And you'll just find that spot where it looks like, okay, that makes sense to have the stitch go there. And then you'll grab a little, this is like a little leather hammer. I got it for like $8 at Michael's, but you could also just use a regular hammer, anything that you can force. So it's going to be kind of loud. So just a warning. And then you'll just kind of punch down until it feels like it made a good rivet. So it looks like it's pretty good. Sometimes I also got this little one. This one has like a lot more force. This one's a lot lighter and this one's a lot heavier. So if you ever are having a hard time stitching through, just take the little one and make little adjustments. So this one makes it goes through a lot faster. As you can see, like that one, that hole looks a lot deeper already. And I think it got into my self-healing cutting mat, but I'm obsessed with it. So I don't care because of that, right? Those cutting mats are awesome. So you're going to take this one and I'll start at the corner. So we just did that side. So then the fourth prong, I'm just going to put the little fork in that fourth one again, just so it's kind of lined up like we want as much as we can. So then you just do it again. Sorry, kind of loud. And you'll just go until you're all the way around the whole leather thing. And so then you can have the stitching. So kind of like how we did on here. So you'll go around and do that on the entire leather part. So another option that we can look into as well is to do little rivets. Oh wait, these aren't my rivets, sorry. To connect. And these are the ones I want to use. Okay. So it's like a little envelope, right? So I'm just going to fold it over and see where I want it to line up. So it looks pretty lined up, just like that. Maybe you want it, maybe you want the fold to come down more. I like this size just because it feels right. But we'll go ahead and, oh, someone said, don't pull the mat out. Yes, good advice. So just like with the stitching, you'll take your little, you can use one of these tools. I wanted to keep it pretty simple. I didn't want you guys to have to go out and buy a ton of stuff, but there are tons of other tools that you can look into using that will do exactly what you need for the leather. So if you're like going to become a leathers person, then you can look into using those tools. But I just wanted to kind of keep it simple. So you can kind of line up on your mat and see where you would want it to go. So maybe like here, we'll make a little spot. And then kind of go the other way, just making a hole big enough to put a rivet through. So it didn't really go through this side, so I can see a mark. So we'll go through this one too. That one is not, I don't know if this table is like, it's not going through very far. Sorry, it's really loud. So then when we have our, I think it needs to go through this one again. Bless you. Okay. So then I don't know if it's gone through enough, actually. You have to poke it through more. Okay, I think we got it actually, at least on this side. So you just kind of poke this first part through that has the little grooves on it. And then this one, poke it through as well. So that's your bottom part. And then you take the top part and you just screw it on. So there you go. So that part is all in, and then you can get your little fasteners. So you would do it the same way. I won't do it again just because it's really loud, probably annoying, but you would do it the same way, but you would actually do it in the middle. So I probably should have done that first. Whoops. So you would want it to kind of go through, like you probably want the button to be right there, right? Or this is another option to bind it as well. So there's this leather cording, and I think it's like $4 maybe at Michael's. So you can kind of do the same thing. Sorry, I'm going to do it again. Don't be mad. So I'm just going to use one of these rivets just to poke that hole through. And then we'll take the cording and we can poke it through that little hole.
Sarah, we had somebody ask, where do you purchase the rivets that you are using?
I got those at Michael's. So there's like a little leather section. I think it was close to the paints, at least at the two that I went to. I had to find like different things. So I would highly recommend looking there. And another thing that's really cool that they have there as well is they have little I'm just going to pull this little piece over. So they have little leather, it's kind of like a grab bag just because leather is so expensive that there's always little pieces, little scraps, right? And so if you're just wanting to kind of just get into leather and test it out, the little bags are like $7 or $8. And you can just grab one of those, and then it's random colors, random different things, but it's awesome because then you can just kind of practice your hand and it's not like crazy expensive. And so I would recommend doing that if you're just getting started. Or they also have like sheets that you can use that you can grab.
Can you also share the names of the tools that you used, the leather tools?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I just forgot the name of this one. So I guess I lied. This one is called a prong. I know this is a prong. These are rivets to connect these. This one's a clasp. So if you're doing your button, that's the clasp. And then this is cording. I can't remember what this one is called. It has a weird name. So that's really helpful because that's like the one that you probably don't know and isn't as obvious. Maybe someone knows. Oh, Ellie said, I was like, Ellie, maybe? I have the. What had I called it on there? Oh, leather spot tool. That's what it's called. So that makes sense. I kind of like that name because it's kind of like saying what it is. So it's the spot. So if you need your stitching. So you can just poke this through the hole. And there's probably other ways to do it that you might like more. So you can poke it through this one, and then you can just make like a little knot behind. This wasn't very pretty how I did it, but I've done it other ways that made more sense. And then you would just have like this little cording that you can just wrap around it, which is kind of fun. I've seen like journals. People do journals that way, which I kind of like. And then, yeah, so there's two options, which are kind of nice. They don't require a lot of stitching, or you could also use this leather cording, do the same thing as we did here, just poke little holes and then just like kind of sew around. Like you can kind of just go like in and then poke another hole here. Sew all the way around the whole little clasp, which is kind of fun. Or the other option is stitching. And I'll be completely honest, there are so many experts out there who know so much about stitching. So I would recommend, if you are interested in this, to just look up on YouTube, just other experts about this. I'll just show you some of the tools that I used. So this is called a pony. So they have like a horse, and that one's big for like big leather things. But this one is a pony because it's smaller, which I think is kind of cute. And you can either use it on a table and just use like a clasp, like one of those, oh, I just forgot what they're called, but you use it for quilting and it like it clamps on. Or this one, it's not super heavy and my little thing isn't very heavy. So you can just fold it and stick it in. So then you have this part, and then, oh, there's this little wood part. And this is where it kind of opens up. So at the top, it's pretty tight, but then you can use this and it just stays in there. So then you can get your piece in that you want to start working on. And then you can take it out. It's not tight now. It's a little bit tight, but if you want it to be tighter, you just keep screwing this. So I found this one, I think it was like $60. So it's not necessary because obviously you can do stitching. You don't need this, right? But if you, again, like I said, if you're like getting into leather, it is really nice to have, just because unlike sewing with like embroidery or something, you can kind of sit and just like go. But because it's so dense and fibrous, you kind of have to like use some strength, right? So the other thing is that you'll need, you can use different types of thread, but depending on what kind of leather you have, the best option is wax thread. And I found this at Michael's. I think it was like also $3. So the wax thread is awesome to use with leather just because it has that already wax thing. You can also wax it yourself with beeswax, but sometimes it's just easier to just get the thread already, right? Save time, like customize what you want and then buy what you want, you know, right? So then you'll just come, and depending on what kind of stitch you want. So I'm just doing a simple stitch, but the saddle stitch is a little more complicated. And that's what a lot of people use with leather. And that one, you have 2 needles on both sides of your thread, and you'll be poking through both sides. So this one you can just use, and you can just kind of poke through the bottom. And I just kind of like poked through where I could hide my knot at the bottom, right? So let's see, poking through here. And you might have to go through and make sure that all of your rivets, I think this side is a little bit tighter. So let's get through this side. I need to re-angle. And poke through. And so this is where your like utility needles come in handy. So I just bought some, again, it was in the leather section. I think it was like $3 for these kind of needles that are a little thicker. They have the bigger eye, so you can fit the wax thread through. And it's sometimes, see, it's kind of a little bit of work sometimes. And that's where if it's getting to be too tough, which sometimes it can be, that's when you can go back and use the little leather spot tool, poke back in, make sure that the holes are nice and ready to go. I don't know if I'm getting it through this one. Oh, there we go. So then you can just pull it through and then you'll just start threading. So this is kind of nice with that because you can kind of just see where your next thread should go. So just come behind. Yeah, I think I needed to have more pressure. So sometimes you have to push really, you have to like hammer it down really hard so that the leather is ready to work, right? And another tip that you could try, depending on how your design is, another thing that might help is like, remember how we started the leather and we kind of scored it, right? We cut it once and then we went through and cut it again. Sometimes it might be helpful depending on your design. Again, if your tangential cuts aren't like crazy, you could even score it to get it ready to stitch, right? So you just like take your design, make it smaller and put it in there. And then the Cameo will cut those lines. And then it's a little easier to work through the leather. So this is, I think that I needed to work a little bit more through it because it's like really hard to get through. Oh. But there we go. So there's one stitch. And again, leather, like one thing that will help a ton is preparation. So if you really prep everything, if you have all of the tools you need, if you get your design ready in Silhouette Studio beforehand, one thing that can help with that is just downloading it, getting it really working hard on it. And then you can also just use your mobile app once it's ready, if you're on the go. And then making sure that you just really prep the leather for what you're gonna do. And leather is kind of like a premium thing, right? It's a little more spendy. You can make something really high end look really nice, but also really custom. So those are kind of my tips. I also liked to add the little chain to the little purse, and then you have your clasps. So there's tons of different ways to do it. So I just wanted to share a few options for you guys. My hands are like killing me from pushing through this leather. So I think that I am gonna wrap up. Are there any final questions? Or you think you'll need to your punch holes? Yeah. Someone said, I think you need your punch holes. Yeah, the punch holes. So I did it in this piece earlier, but I think I needed to do more and to use more pressure. Let's see, are there any other questions? Oh, what size needle? That's a good question. So it's like about 2 inches. I'm not sure the diameter, but it's pretty thick. So this will be available on Michael's YouTube. There's a playlist that we can share on social media. If you have any questions about leather, also just keep checking back. We'll have more tips, more tricks. And if you have any more tips or tricks, just share it on our social media. We'd love to hear from you. So thanks for tuning in. We appreciate your time. Thanks for being awesome and creative. Have a good week.